I've said, if you've been in sales for the past 10 years in SaaS, it really just has not been that hard because we've over-engineered the sales process.
Yeah.
We've put too much technology, too many numbers, and we've lost the empathy factor. We've really lost that, like, thinking about the person on the other end of that phone, the email, whatever, as a person. And you've heard me say this before, like, when Morgan came on board, right? He was doing all right. His results were okay. And then he came to me one day and he said, John, like, I don't get it. Like, I feel like all the effort I'm putting in, my effort should, I should get better results. And I said, Morgan, your results aren't going to change until one thing does. And it's till you start giving a shit. And he was like, well, what do you mean? I said, look, obviously you give a shit about your, working here and all that, but until you start actually caring about the person on the other end of that phone and thinking of them as a person, as opposed to a number, it's not going to change. And so a lot of what I'm trying to do these days, I think we've lost the business acumen component of all of this. And so what I'm trying to do is help reps have some empathy. So for instance, having companies bring in procurement from their existing customers to do interviews with their sales teams on what does it look like.
So powerful.
Doing research on these people, just simply Googling and saying, hey, procurement in this industry, top priorities, challenges 2023. And just reading job descriptions and looking at these people as people, because then, and we'll get into this and I'd love your perspective, I think once you look at it that way, then negotiations is a hell of a lot easier. It's a hell of a lot more collaborative than combative. Do you agree?
Yes. Yeah, I agree entirely. And I think we have these ideas that we make up in our mind of each other, of what the priorities are and what the priorities aren't. And it's interesting to see how people think that procurement thinks. And look, I'm not going to stand here and say procurement doesn't care about cost savings. Obviously, they care about cost savings in much the same way that sales teams care about revenue, right? But the revenue is the outcome of the value that gets provided in much the same way as the cost savings is the outcome of the value that gets provided on the procurement side. So it's just a mindset shift, I think.
I actually wanted to, we're going to get into the book here, but I wanted to circle back on something we had talked about before, which is that exact thing, right? Which is, you had said something, I don't know if it was the first or second time we had the conversation about procurement, about how it is not just their job to get the best price, right? It's to get the best value, but they're also on the hook. So for instance, if procurement is involved and they beat the shit out of the vendor so much that the quality of the initial product they were supposed to be getting based on the champion doing their thing and all that other stuff, if that is diluted because certain things got taken out or the price was so low that the vendor can't now even support them in a profitable way, and if that solution doesn't actually do what it was supposed to do because procurement had an impact on it, procurement is on the hook for that, right? So, but my question, I guess, for you is how are they on the hook for it? Like, I don't understand, like, when we lose a deal in sales, it's obvious, right? When we sign a shitty deal in sales, we get beat up for it. We might not get commission for it, whatever it is. So there is some very tangible and objective things to look at. And I know exactly what happens when that happens on my side of the house. What does it happen on procurement side of the house?
Yeah, it's all internal political. It's a political thing internally. So we may not be on the hook for the overall implementation of the thing, but the people who are going to get blamed if something goes wrong and we source the thing that doesn't necessarily work the way the people wanted it to work is always going to be procurement, because someone who uses the end product or the end software or the end service is going to use it and go, this isn't what we wanted this. And that's why it's so important. We drill this into procurement people. It's so important to sit down with our internal stakeholders on the customer side of the conversation, right? So if I'm a procurement person, I can't go out, or I shouldn't go out and buy something without having a very deep conversation with my stakeholder to say, what is it that you want? Because if my goal for cost savings supersedes your goals for quality, service, durability, all of those things that make sense for you, then I'm actually not doing my job, because my job is to be a facilitator of value for the organization. So it's pretty rare. and I'm not going to say that it's not always going to be this way, but it's pretty rare that cost savings is actually the number one goal on a procurement person's mind.
Yeah.
At least in a well matured procurement department.
Yeah.
Sure, there are some where that is, you're always going to default to that, but in a good enterprise sized organization, it's pretty rare that cost savings is the number one goal. They give you the impression that it's the number one goal because they want to maximize their goals as well. Yeah. But usually the number one goal is quality and service and safety and those kinds of things.